Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy and today I'm going to show you how to add a mane and tail to your crochet horse dolls. If you want to see how I made these horse dolls or these centaur dolls out of crochet, you can find the links in the description below. Or if you want to see the technique I used to make this fiery mane and tailed Ponyta from Pokemon, you can find that link too. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, I'll be using a size E. You'll need some yarn to make up the hair strands of your doll. You can use any color you like for your horse's hairs. I like to use a contrasting color, but if you like, you could use the same color. For this one, I'll be using charcoal and black from Red Heart Super Saver. You'll also need some Aran or worsted weight yarn to act as the foundation for your mane and tail. I'll be using the same Red Heart black yarn, but you can use any yarn that's the same color or a similar color as the actual strands of hair you're going to make. You'll need some scissors, a yarn needle, a grooming brush, a straightener, and of course you'll need a horse doll. If you like, you can purchase the written pattern for my horse doll or my centaur doll. It's available in my Ravelry store and you can find that link in the description below. First I'm going to create a foundation to place the strands of my mane onto. So I'm going to pull up a loop at the top middle of the back of my doll's head and chain one. And that's going to count as the first stitch, so I'll mark it with a bobby pin. Then I'm going to single crochet in a straight line down the middle of the neck into each row until I get to where I want the mane to end. I'm going to do about 20 stitches total, but if you made a larger doll, you might need more stitches. Okay, I've reached the bottom of the neck just above the shoulders, so now I'm going to end the row. So to end the row, I'm just going to slip stitch to the next row of the body. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in the end. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the tail and create a foundation for my strands. This one's going to be a little different though, so I'm going to pull up a loop into the bottom of my horse doll where I want the tail to start. And then I'm going to chain 6 to act as the foundation. But if you made a larger horse doll, you may need to create a longer chain. Just chain more than 6 in the foundation chain. Okay, I have my 6 chains. Next I'll chain one more to count as the first stitch. And again, I'll mark that stitch with my bobby pin. Now I'm going to single crochet into the third chain from my hook. Then I'm going to single crochet into each of the remaining chains until I get back to the bottom. I should have a total of 6 stitches. Okay, here at the bottom I'm going to slip stitch into the same stitch where I pulled up a loop at the beginning of the row. Then I'm going to cut off my yarn and sew in the end. Alright, now that I'm done with my foundation rows, I'm going to cut my strands. Each strand needs to be double the length I want the final hair to be, so I'm going to measure and cut my strands for the mane and the tail. If you like, you could use a book or a piece of cardboard that's about the length that you want your hairs to be, and you could wrap your yarn around the cardboard to make sure all your strands are the same size. I'll be using this piece of cardboard that I cut to the length that I want the hairs to be. Make sure you cut enough strands that you can place one strand of yarn into the loops at the top and bottom and onto each post of the single crochets from our foundation rows. That means you should cut at least 3 strands per stitch. So I'll cut 60 strands for the mane, since there were 20 stitches in the mane, and 18 strands for the tail, since there were 6 stitches in the tail. If you like, you could make the mane and the tail different lengths, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll just make all the strands the same size. Also, I'm using 2 different shades for my mane and tail. If you like, you could add just one color. I'm going to make double the amount of black strands as charcoal strands, so I'll cut 2 strands of black for every strand of charcoal. So that means I'll need 26 charcoal strands, and I'll need 52 black strands. Okay, I've finished cutting all my strands. Now I'm going to anchor my strands. So first I'm going to take a strand and fold it in half to create a loop in the middle. Now I'm going to pull up that loop from the middle of my strand into the top loop of one of the stitches of my foundation row. Then I'm going to pull both of my tail ends of my strand through that loop. Then I'm just going to pull both of these ends to tighten the loop. And now my strand is anchored. I realize it's a bit hard to see since I'm using black yarn for this horse's hair. Here's a clip from my fiery mane horse. The method is the same, but since I'm using red, it's a little easier to see. So here's the first stitch. I'm going to work into the top loop here. And I'm going to leave the bottom loop here empty for now, so that I can add another row to that loop later. So take a strand, fold it in half, and pull it up from the middle into just the top loop of the stitch. Then pull both tails through the loop, and pull both ends to tighten the loop. And now the strand is anchored. So I'm just going to keep doing that until I've added a strand to the top loop of each stitch of my foundation rows. Since I'm using 2 colors, I'll mix up the colors a bit as I go. Okay, now I have a strand in each top loop. Again, it's a bit hard to see the black yarn, so here's another clip of my fiery mane horse. For this row of hair, I'm going to work into the bottom loop only, the loop we left out in the last row. So take a strand, fold it in half, and pull it up from the middle into just the bottom loop of the stitch. Then pull both tails through the loop, and pull both ends to tighten the loop. And now the strand is anchored. Now I'm going to add another strand to each bottom loop with my black and charcoal strands, in the same way. Fold my strand, pull up a loop from the middle, and pull through my tails. I'm going to continue adding strands to each of my bottom loops. Alright, I've added all my strands to my bottom loops. If you like, you could stop here, but I'm going to add another row of strands around the posts of each stitch to add more volume to the hair. Again, I'll show you this with my red yarn. So the post of the stitch is this pair of loops right here underneath where I placed the first 2 rows of hair. So I'm going to fold my strand, then I'm going to pull up a loop around the post of my stitches, around these 2 loops. And pull the tails through the loop on my hook. Now I'll do the same thing with the black and charcoal strands until I've finished adding strands to each post. Alright, I've added the strands to the foundation rows of both the mane and the tail. If you like, you could just leave it like this, or you could pull apart each strand, brush, and straighten the hair to give it a more realistic look. This is pretty much the same technique I used in my doll wigs series. I'm going to take each strand of yarn, and I'm going to untwist them so that each individual thread of yarn is loose. Then once I've completed the entire mane and tail, I'm going to use my grooming brush to brush out all these strands to give them a more hair-like appearance. When you brush the strands, it really brings out the gradient effect between the colors. Once I've finished brushing out the hair, I'm going to use my straightener at a low temperature to straighten the hair in small bunches at a time. And now the mane and tail are complete. There are so many ways you can customize the mane and tail to get a more unique look. You could add curls or braids to the horse's mane and tail, or use different colors. If you want to see the technique I used to make this fiery mane and tailed Ponyta from Pokemon, you can find that link in the description below, as well as the links for my horse body tutorials, more doll hair videos, or my pattern store on Ravelry, where you can find all my designs. If you use any of these techniques to make a horse or centaur doll of your own, I'd love to see your interpretation. You can find all of my social media links in the description below. If you enjoyed this tutorial, you could press the like button or share it on social media. And if you'd really like to help out the channel, you could donate to my Patreon. You can get some pretty cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos early, access to some of my prototype patterns, and discounts in my Ravelry store, depending on your level of donation. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. You could also subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss the next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!